It's been a minute. Welcome. Welcome. Now before I get started with this video, I want to apologize for not posting for it. It's been a minute. I think it's been like over a month. I've had a lot going on. I just graduated recently. Hold on. Look at my cap I had for graduation. It's actually crazy. Some of the stickers are coming up now, but like when I first made it, I thought I was actually the one. But yeah, I was trying to get out of school for sure, but I definitely have been reading the same amount. Well, at least to an extent. I've definitely had a lot of work to do, but I've been figuring it out, been finding my pockets. I didn't want to leave you guys hanging for too long. So for this video, I want to do an update of like what I have been reading, what I finished up to this point in this year, what I plan on reading for the foreseeable, just really anything, just a big update video. I may throw in some new books I just recently picked up because I have a lot of books that you guys haven't seen because I haven't done a haul. But that'll be kind of more like on a whim. I might do that later on. Bro, why is my record upside down? Actually, I might as well show it to you guys. I just got Trick by Alex G, one of my favorite albums of all time. Now, I'm a huge Alex fan. I love Trick. I love Rocky. I think Rocky's really underrated. Like, Witch and Alina are both like top 10 Alex, and they're both from that album. No one ever talks about it. I don't know why. But on Trick, you have like Sarah, Change, Clouds, Adam, Mary. You have so many crazy songs on this album. If you have not heard it, please listen to it. That was a brief stopper. Let's get to the actual video now. All right, what am I gonna start with? I'll start with what I have read for the year. Alright, so I've knocked out so far. I don't know what order I'm gonna do these in. I forgot when I finished them. So I think the first one I finished this year was the comedy. I finally finished the comedy in its totality, and I can actually talk about it now and give accurate analysis of it. Recommend it like confidently. I always felt bad because that's where I got my name from. Dante's not my actual name, but I got it from Alighieri because I've always been fascinated with the character. Well, not the character from the book, but like the character of who he was as a person. The comedy's probably my favorite reads I've ever read. I think Inferno is the most critically acclaimed, but I think my favorite was Purgatorio. Like, being honest, how people hold the 7 rings of hell, like the imagery of how Dante depicted it, how they hold that in high regard, I think they should do the same thing for the mountain in Purgatory. I think they're both equally as interesting because neither one of them are really described in the Bible. You get more for hell because you get fire and brimstone, you get the gates, the pit of fire, or the sea of forgetfulness. You get a lot of stuff that can at least give him something to pull from, but in Purgatory, it's not even mentioned in the Bible. There's nowhere that it says anything like that. It brings up like Abraham's bosom. You could maybe argue paradise, where Dismas went whenever Jesus told him, "You'll be with me." But I don't know if these things are Purgatory. There was nothing for Dante to pull from, and he created a mountain to depict what he was trying to portray. Like, to me, that was the coolest part of the whole book. I think Virgil's character is super interesting. The guy that Dante had, there was a lot of cool stuff. But I also see how this is very much, what's the word for it? I'm not going to say satirical because I do think it was serious in nature, but I do think that there's some parts of it, because like, he had all these people that he admired, and they all just kind of just gassed him up in the book. Like, people that he looked up to, he would see them in the afterlife, and they would like talk about him like he was like this great. Like, it was very clear that he was trying to like kind of boost his ego a little bit. But that's my only critique of the book. I think it's one of the best books ever, at least that I've read. I think it's Mount Rushmore for all literature. I think it's top 4 all time. Like, it's up there with the War and Peace and the Raven and Karamazov. Like, I think it's up there with all of those. Highly recommend, but you guys have probably already read this, but if you haven't, please read it. Next book I finished was The Three Tales from Flaubert. I don't know how to say his name, I'm sorry. So as you guys know, I've mentioned it before, but I've read Sentimental Education from him. I was fascinated with how he would depict everything. He was like a Ray Bradbury or a Tolstoy kind of on steroids, where he would have this vivid imagery of everything. Like, everything was so, it was like a picture that I was reading. Like, the words he would use, his word choice, everything was like, and I wouldn't even say word choice because it wasn't like he was like a Kafka whenever he was weighing his words, and it was like, there's only 3 words in a sentence, but they all hold weight. It wasn't like that. How Flaubert writes is that it'll be like a whole paragraph seemingly talking about one thing, but like everything, it doesn't feel like it's bloated. It feels like everything is adding to the picture. And I think sometimes that's where Bradbury would lose me, because I started picking up Something Wicked Comes This Way. I love 451 from Bradbury, but I read, I think, 2 chapters of Something Wicked, and I did enjoy it. I think I was reading something else at the time, and I just kind of put it down, because he would depict everything, but it felt kind of bloated sometimes. Even though I will pick it up soon because I do love his writing style, I just think sometimes it can get a little bloated. But that's never the case with Flaubert. I plan on doing a whole video on some of my favorite authors, so I'm not going to talk about too much of the plot of this, but I might get into it later on. But The Three Tales is Herodias, Saint Julian, and I'm pretty sure Simple Heart. Simple Heart's about a Catholic priest who goes through a lot of like loss and forgetfulness, and she still holds true to her faith. St. Julian's about a hunter that's like, he's fast, like a sadistic hunter who's like prophesied, or like not prophesied, but bound to kill his parents. That story is crazy. Definitely read that one. And then Herodias is a story about Salome and John the Baptist. Kind of like a retelling or a commentary on it. All three great though. I recommend all of them. I'm probably going to talk about them all more in depth, but I do think Flaubert is something that people need to kind of get in tune with. I don't hear his name too often, but I think I should hear it way more than I do. If you want to read a full-length novel, I recommend Sentimental Education because I really enjoyed that, and that was really early in my journey when I first read it. So it's not too dense prose-wise, or he's not going to overbear you with too much stuff going on. I saw someone commented, but it says you like Flaubert because you read Flaubert. Like, there's not really anything else there. Like, I can't really give you an in-depth analysis of him because he doesn't, that's not what he's for. Very rich in imagery, but I do recommend Flaubert's stuff because I really enjoyed it. Next book I read, Autobiography of Malcom X. Not fully done with it because I'm reading it with my family. It's like a book club we do. But I'm like 70, 80 pages from the end, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So as I've gotten older, probably maybe since the age of 20, 21, I've been pushed into more of a political way of thinking because I'm just a very vivid and overthinker about everything. And I feel like everything's supposed to be intellectual. Everything's supposed to be political because if it's not, there's no point in them governing all of us. Like if everything wasn't supposed to be political, I feel like it wouldn't be cornerstones of society. The pillars that hold up community as it is politics. I don't understand why people wouldn't want to get into it. I understand not talking too much about it in every setting. I understand there's time and place, but I do think anti-intellectualism and I do think people anti-politics getting talked about, standing on something, I feel like these things shouldn't exist, honestly. And I say all that to say, I think reading the Autobiography of Malcom X has pushed me even farther into like, I'm really about to start honing what I think my political views truly are. I'm not going to say I've been spoon-fed beliefs growing up, because my parents were never, not even just my parents, the society around me in general, I was kind of always, I wouldn't say blind to the world, but I was almost like willfully ignorant. I didn't think it mattered to me. And it wasn't really until I realized the gravity of life that's around me, constantly pushing me down every time I walk anywhere, that like, I need to get into this. But if you have this conception of Malcolm X in your head, I really challenge you to read this because what you think you know about him, you definitely don't. Like how he grew up, you would never think Malcolm X grew up that way. Outside of it being rough, you don't know why it was rough and what really went into it. It was insane. I plan on doing a whole video on this, but I don't know when I'm going to do that. I have a lot of videos to make because I've been slacking. Like he was like a chameleon for his time. I've heard that term used for him before and I see why they called him that. His philosophy changed so much throughout the years. Like the whole ideology of the split between human rights and civil rights, him being radical but almost not really radical, being strictly defensive, his whole stint with the NOI. Like there's so much like, ah man, it was one of the best reads I've ever read, especially about someone, about a person. I don't think I had a more powerful read other than maybe Diary of Anne Frank, which I do think is one of the best books ever. Recently, I've also just been fascinated with people. I think that people are just so interesting, especially ones that make giant strides for other people. People that sacrifice themselves, almost martyr themselves for others. And not as in like a physical martyr, like they don't gotta actually die for them, even though a lot of people have. I truly mean someone being a figurative martyr, someone that like knows what they're gonna put out to the world will make them get the backlash, but it will push so many people forward. Like to me, that's so fascinating. I'm definitely about to start getting onto more of a political route when it comes to my thought processes, what I do read, what I plan on reading in the future. This book would definitely be one that I'm always gonna hold to as like the start of that for me. And also another quick sidebar, he's probably the most articulate person that I've ever read. When it comes to like autobiographies, like someone writing about themselves in perspective, I think it's him or maybe Kafka's Diaries, but other than that, I don't think there's anyone else better. Highly recommend this for sure, especially for Black Americans. That shouldn't even be a question. Next book I got here, The Prophet, Khalil Gibran. Now this is in my top maybe 4 or 5 favorite books of all time. I think I heard about it before. I think that's why I picked it up, but I don't really hear about it talked about too often. But outside of Ecclesiastes from the Bible and Proverbs from the Bible, both written by the smartest man to ever live, you could maybe throw Song of Solomon in there, maybe Analects Confucius, Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Outside of those 4 or 5 texts, I don't think there's anything more poetic than this. And I've read a lot of extremely talented poets. I've read Sylvia, who's one of my favorite writers of all time. You guys know that. I've read Rainer's poetry. I've read Langston Hughes. 2 powerhouses. I've read Edgar Allan Poe. But nothing is like, this is the most insane thing I've ever read when it comes to like flow in poetry. It was beautiful stuff. So there's a prophet that voyages out to different places, and the seer from whatever place he's going to next will see him in a dream and know he's coming, inform everyone of the place that they see over, and tell them the prophet is coming. So like have questions ready, ask him what you need to ask him. So when he gets there, it's expected. And the place in the book that it was that he went to was Orphocles. At least I think that's what it was called. I don't even know how to say it. I think it's Orphocles though. And when he gets there, he's instantly like, oh my gosh, the prophet's here, was asking these questions. They bring him to the temple, and the whole book, because everything I just mentioned to you was probably given in 3-4 pages. Now the next 100 pages of this book is simply questions that the people of the Orphocles asked to the prophet. And they would ask him things like, can you tell us about love, law and order, crime and punishment, marrying, giving, children, parenting, everything, death, anything you could ever think of is in this book. Now where the poetry comes in is how the prophet will speak. It's like I'm pretty sure prose is how someone speaks on paper. So I don't know if that's the right word to use for how he speaks. But I'll just say, for lack of better words, his orator skills, his articulation, he was speaking the most poetic way I've ever seen in any book ever. And obviously I know like it's Khalil's writing, but in my head when I was visualizing how this would look, I envisioned a prophet speaking, and I was like, yo, I've never heard anything this poetic in my life. There's a little bit of Old English in there. I think it was written in like 1850, so obviously he was writing in an older tone than he was in, like time period wise. But it doesn't really throw me off. I think it's because I read the KJV Bible, so like I'm kind of used to some of the words he was using. But even if you are, like the words aren't that crazy to where you'll be like thrown off by it. It's very powerful read. I highlighted everything in this book that I thought was powerful, and the whole book's highlighted. Like, I'll show you. Like, every single page is underlined, highlighted, something was on it. But this book was so good. And he almost personified all these concepts. Like, for example, when he was talking about love, he was saying, whenever you get into a tango with love, so like a dance, and he called love as your dance partner. And it's one that will never truly lead you astray, but you have to trust it. Meaning it can go left, it can go right, but you have to let it do its thing. For lack of better words, I'm not as poetic as he is. Then there's another thing down the line, I think it was Law and Order, when he was talking about how there's like a metaphorical like line for a society. And everyone in society walks over this rock or this stumbling stone. And then one person trips on that rock and they're all mad at the person that tripped. Now, it doesn't read like the person that tripped on this stone is completely absolved of any kind of blame. But how it reads is that everyone that walked over the stone that didn't take the time to move it is just as bad on you as it is on the person that stumbled. Which brings in a whole like completely collective kind of mindset. Ones that you'd see maybe from like, maybe some more of the communist thinkers or maybe like more of the collective thinkers. Like stuff that's very forward thinking stuff. Like it was just very powerful. Like I really enjoyed the read, and every single response was just as powerful as the last. But there's another one that was talking about parenting, and it was saying the pains of parenting is that there's an archer. I think the archer was supposed to resemble God or maybe whatever divine figure that it was talking about in this book. But the picture that was painted in this book is that God would use a bow to propel an arrow. And he's saying the parents are the bow and the arrow is the child. And it's saying the pains when it comes to parenting is that whenever he's pulling the bow back, you're getting pulled with the bow, so it's hurting you. But it's only used, this pain's only used to whenever he lets go, the child can go farther. So the more pain you're taking on as a parent when you're trying to help your son or you're trying to help your daughter, it's getting pulled back from God. God is using you to propel the arrow farther. Like, you understand when I read that, I was like, who thinks of stuff like that? It's just beautiful stuff, man. Like, this is one of the greatest books of all time. Please read it. So the next book I read, I only read one of the plays in here. There's 4 plays in this book, but it's Sartre's plays. I think it's Sartre, actually. I think I've been saying Sartre for like a year now. But more specifically, I read No Exit. So probably my favorite play of all time. I've read 3 of the tragedies. So I've read Romeo and Juliet, I've read King Lear, and I've read Hamlet. I've read A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. What else have I read? If you count Oedipus's plays, I've read Oedipus. I've read a good amount of the Greek plays, but this is my favorite one. So essentially, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler, but it doesn't take too much comprehension to understand what he's talking about if you read maybe 2 pages into it. So it's not that big of a spoiler. Like, it never really says it until the very end, I don't think, but like, you should know what's going on. But basically, there's 3 people that come into this room that's locked, and a valet escorts them in. And everyone comes in kind of with this preconceived notion of what the place is, but the reader doesn't really know. They keep dancing around stuff like torture, like where's the torturer, where's like the prongs and the red hot metal, like where's all this stuff that we learn about on Earth or while we were living. Spoiler. But basically the whole play is that they're dancing around the fact that they're all in hell. And they all knew they were coming to hell because they knew how they lived when they were alive. Now here's where it gets actually insane. This is, oh my god, I love reading so much. It gets crazy because there's no torturer, there's no like devil, you don't see Satan, you don't see any of these things that you would depict hell as. And I think earlier on in the book it talks about, I think maybe first page, like the valet that escorts the man was like he was like, you thought all that stuff was real, like kind of playing on the fact that like hell isn't really a real place. I think it's a real place, obviously, but I'm just saying why it was cool to read from that perspective, because like he was like, all this stuff's not, why do you think that's real? And but this is before we know that it's truly hell they're in, when I first got into the book. So I was like, what does he mean by that? But now I know what he meant. But Sartre's trademarked a sentence when it comes to like what kind of encapsulates its whole philosophy is hell is other people, and that comes from the No Exit play, and it's said later on in the book, but it's like kind of pinpointed or alluded to throughout the entire play. Because the only torment, the only torture that gets brought up the entire read is other people. Estelle, Inez, and Garcine are all the people that come into this hell. Now, Estelle loves Garcine, and Inez loves Estelle, and Garcine needs the approval of Inez. So there's a triangle going on where no one can really win, because Garcine needs approval from Inez, because him and Inez are kind of the same person when it comes to who they were on Earth. So Garcine needing the approval from Inez because he was a coward in his past life, or he thinks he was a coward in his past life, and Inez doesn't like him. So he's saying, if I can convince Inez that I wasn't a coward, then that's all I need. I can die peacefully, basically. But Inez will never give him that because Inez thinks he was a coward. So he'll never ever get this approval that he needs. So Garcine's hell is approval from other people. Estelle is in love with Garcine. Garcine doesn't really pay attention to her because Garcine needs the approval from Inez. So Estelle's hell is unrequited love. Estelle loves Garcine, but Garcine will never love Estelle because he's too busy looking for the approval of someone else. So this eternal never getting approval from someone else leads to an eternal of never paying attention to her. So approval, unrequited love, and Inez loves Estelle. But it's not really love. I think her hell was supposed to be never being seen, because something happened while she was on Earth to where it kind of hides the fact that she was kind of a ghost figure. No one ever really saw her for her. She had like an affair, all kind of crazy stuff. So Inez loving Estelle, Estelle loving Garcine, but Garcine never loving Estelle, and Estelle only paying attention to Garcine and not Inez, now leads her to never be seen. So her eternal, it's so crazy. So her eternal punishment wasn't some torture, it wasn't red tongs, it wasn't some devil running around with fire and stuff. Her eternal hell was that she could never be seen by the person that she wanted to love. And all the torment going on this entire time is only other people. I was waiting for someone to come in with like a pitchfork or some devil to come in like try and do something that we've seen in hell depictions, but it's nothing like that. And I think it's one of the most powerful reads I've ever read, because it shows a lot of torment in real life, that the hell we experience on Earth is because we can allow other people to dictate our lives. If you allow someone to be able to hold your life in their hands and drop it at any moment, you are now living in eternal hell to them. You deferred your agency to someone else. And I think full autonomy and full agency is what makes us human. The drive to be human is the drive to want to have agency over your own life. And I feel like Garcine, Inez, and Estelle giving their entire well-being into something else, putting all the rest in one basket, they can easily just drop the basket. That's what made it an eternal hell for them. It wasn't a torment, it wasn't fire, it wasn't a devil or a Satan. Absolutely insane read. One of my favorites ever. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Next one I got here, Kafka's Diaries. So as you guys know, Kafka's my favorite writer of all time. I'll show you guys my tattoo like I do every single time, but I know y'all see him. The GOAT. So before I say anything, yes, I'm okay. Whatever I'm about to say in this segment, do not try and check on me or anything. I promise I'm alright. But I've never felt more seen from any other book, any artwork in general, honestly. No song, no album, no painting, no performance, no theater, nothing has ever made me feel the way like Kafka's Diaries did. I've never seen anything like this. I've always thought that I had like a very unique way of seeing the world, and it was like, obviously it's more dark. I wouldn't say nihilistic, because I do think there's so much meaning in the world that it becomes diluted. So I guess it is nihilistic, because like whenever you have a surplus of something, it could become mundane to you and you could kind of overlook it. So I think all the misalignings that I've had in life have simply come from the fact that I know there's so much meaning in it that I'm kind of overlooking it. And I feel like Kafka felt the same way. And it was just so rare for me to see someone else think that way, because I've never seen, at least who I've talked to, at least, I mean, I don't really talk to many people about it, but I don't even know I'm really saying on a YouTube video right now. That's crazy. I think I'm being more vulnerable with this camera than I have been with anyone else in my life. That's insane. But reading Kafka's stuff to me is like, bro, he's just, man, he's literally me. Like, I've read The Castle. I have not read The Trial. I think I started it, but it was like my first book I ever tried to pick up, and I couldn't read it. I have not read America. Kafka's my favorite writer of all time, but even before I read The Castle, simply off of his short stories. And I think 90% of his short stories are all third person. So when I was reading his diaries, seeing him in a first person point of view was like really rare to me. I've never seen anything like that from him. And it was such a unique form of first person, because most first person point of view is kind of like whenever you're having a race car game in a video game, where it's like, okay, I see the hands on the wheel, I'm looking through the eyes, and it's super close, the screen is close, and that's how it reads. But Kafka's first person was like he was detached from his body, and he was watching himself and just writing it in I or my in first person articles. Like, he just read like he was detached from his life. Like, he was watching a movie of himself and just saying I because he knows it's him. It's insane. Like, that's how potent he was writing, and that's how crazy it was. Because you got to think, if it was point of view the way it normally is, you might miss certain things because you're so enveloped in yourself. And you can't be unbiased if you're talking about yourself, because why would you? There's not a point. You would think it would just bleed through, or I'm talking about myself, so I don't need to get too far into detail because I know what I'm doing. And also, no one was supposed to read these. So he would like write in a way of like, I already know what's going on in my life really, and no one's going to read what I'm writing right now. So let me just speak in vaguer terms, for lack of better words. But that's not how Kafka would write. Kafka would write like he was giving an in-depth analysis of someone just named Franz Kafka. And he was someone detached from his life. And he was watching and seeing him do all this stuff and just saying, well, that's me, so I'll just say I. We get names in this book. We get places that I looked it up, places that actually exist, people that Kafka actually knew. There's not, because a lot of memoirs I've read or diaries I've read kind of etch out names. Like, the Kafka stuff is, you can read everything he was saying. And how Kafka approached depression, how he approached him feeling isolated, the self-isolation he put himself through, all of this stuff was just worded so well. It's kind of like how whenever I see the painting Stanzik, how that painting makes me feel when it comes to isolation is how this whole book made me feel during the read. And it took me a good amount of time to read it, because honestly there was sometimes where I couldn't even read past like maybe 20, 30 pages, because Kafka would sink you into this gloomy state of like, bro, it's just, he's like a mastermind with his word choice. And it's crazy because even in his short stories, he would have sentences with 3 to 4 words and just like back to back, really punchy sentences. It was the same way for this, but imagine that in first person. Like, there was segments in the book where he would say things that are like, I did this, I did that. And you would think that'd be boring and would get choppy, but like, to me, it just added to the lore of the book so much. Like, he was, I'm running out of words to say for this. Like, another section I remember vividly was there's like, he would give himself like almost a pros and cons list, but it would be like in the form of answer choices. Like, something would come up and he would be like, option A, do this. Option B, do this. Option C. Like, he would give himself choices because he was, I'm telling you, it'll read like he was outside of his life and he was like almost watching himself in a simulation. He's the greatest of all time. Like, I've said Sylvia for like a year now. I think Kafka is the greatest ever. I might have to just stick by that. I just ordered The Trial, the Penguin edition, the one I used to have, but I think I gave it away. That'll be my next fiction read after I read what I'll mention it later on. But I cannot wait. Kafka to me is just, oh my gosh. Next one I got here. Now, I have not read this full thing, but I've been reading Montaigne's essays. Now, I started writing essays of my own. I started trying to just get my thoughts on paper because I think a lot just throughout the days. I need something kind of outlet to put them somewhere. And it's just fun. I'm also just a big art guy, and I think essays are a cool form of expression. But when I first started getting into writing essays, I was like, okay, let me read something of one of the earlier essays. How did essays even become a thing? Because they're a unique way of memoir. It's kind of first person, but it doesn't have to be. It's like a weird middle ground of what is this really? So who was the first person to have essays? I look it up, and the first essayist of all time is Montaigne. Or at least the first one with the name, the title beside it. And he had some of the first essays to ever really be published. And I started reading them because I had Apology of Raymond Saban, which is an essay that's also in this book. I haven't really got to it yet, but I just know it's in here. I saw it. And I was like, okay, I know this name, so I guess let me just start with him. So I went to my Barnes & Nobles, got this complete essays edition. I don't know why I keep getting these giant books. And the other day I was like, okay, let me pick it up, and I start reading it. Super unique way of writing. I could tell that it's an early essay style because it's like a mix of first and second person, or first and third person. It almost reads like reflections instead of works of literature. And I'm pretty sure the book I have is chronological order, so as it gets deeper into his life, obviously it gets more articulate. But earlier on, it almost feels like he was just reflecting on things he enjoyed. Stuff that he saw in life, he would just write about it. And it wasn't like he was trying to drill you to death with word choice and verbiage, tenses, prose. Like, it's not like you're reading a Heidegger. It reads much more like I'm fascinated with this, let me share it. Now, Montaigne was super intelligent. So whenever you do read it, it's like, okay, clearly he's a genius. But I don't think that was the main focal point of what he was trying to get across, which I do heavily relate to. I don't have a literary degree. I can't really write or articulate the way I want to because there's words I'm missing, there's tenses I'm missing, my prose isn't there yet. But I do think I have a lot of thought-provoking ideas, and I do think like get them on paper and kind of churn them out the way Montaigne did, I can probably make some stuff that's very good. But speaking of his essays, one that really stuck with me was he was talking about, I think it's called On Pity, and he gave a commentary on the story about Alexander the Great and Betis. Now, if you don't know that story, basically Betis he stood up to Alexander the Great and he said, you're not just gonna come and pillage my town, or I think it was a city. And this is in the midst of Alexander the Great's complete terror through, he was just, you know, what Alexander the Great did. So seeing someone stand up to him in this way was like, no one thought this was a thing. Now, the whole gist of this essay was basically talking about how people would see someone and feel pity for them for doing things that are valiant. For someone standing up for themselves, being brave, you would think that that would give someone the pity over it. And then before he talked about Alexander the Great, I think there was two other stories that mentioned kings or soldiers that did take pity on people that stood up for themselves or they felt bad for somebody. But Alexander the Great story was last, and for good reason, because when I was talking about Betis, and it was saying he stood up to him, it said Alexander the Great was so staunch and he was so stubborn that when he saw Betis standing up for himself, his mind didn't resort to I feel bad, it resorted to he's trying to manipulate me. I'm not going to let my emotions get dictated by someone else being weaker than me. He was actually psycho. But how that story ends is that Alexander the Great ties Betis' heels to the back of the chariot and drags him around the city, which is obviously reminiscent of Achilles and Hector from Iliad. But all that to say, then he gives like I think another page of commentary saying like you have to know who you're trying to appeal to. Because for some people, pity versus valor would be I feel bad for someone weaker than me, and him standing up for himself makes me feel a certain way. But for some people that are super prideful and maybe narcissistic in nature, when it comes to that, they'll see you as trying to manipulate them and make you an example. Which obviously doesn't have to be for war. It can be for your boss at work. It can be for anything. Just know who you're appealing to. I think that's also mentioned in The Prince by Machiavelli. This whole kind of alluding to the topic of know who you're talking to, kind of. But that was just one essay. There was On Sadness in here. Apology of Raymond Saban. I have read through a little bit, kind of chipped at it. There's any kind of topic, because you see how long this book is. Like, obviously, he wrote about everything. I think after I finish my fiction reads, I'm probably going to finish what I'm currently reading right now. I'm going to read The Trial by Kafka. Then I'm going to try and knock out probably a good chunk, maybe like 400 pages of this book. I'm just super fascinated with this prose, and it's not really that hard to read, so I'm excited to get into it. Now, the last book I got here that I've read this year is Anthem by Ayn Rand. I've already talked about this on this account already, I think my last video, so I'm not going to give too long of a analysis. But essentially, the story is about a man named Equality. Everyone has names like that. Everyone's names are like equality, togetherness, collective, all kind of stuff like that. Now, Ayn Rand's whole philosophy and why she is acclaimed but also tarnished a lot is because she's completely object to collectivism. And I have not read anybody more individualistic than her, maybe outside of Nietzsche, who they do remind me of each other a lot. I might make a video on that. But basically, equality is in a society where they can't use first-person articles. So we can't say I, you can't say my. He must only use stuff like we, our, us, and it's hard for him. And whenever he's saying things, I think it's also written very well. I love her prose, but how it's written is that he'll say things and it'll be like an M dash or an ellipses in the middle of a sentence because he knows what he just said isn't what he tried to say. He's like, why am I saying we if I'm only talking about myself? He'll say like, we are hungry today, but he's like, no one else is here. And there's this like ultimate cognitive dissonance that's like palpable when you read. And the whole story is about him kind of persevering through his society, seeing how it ends up, what he does to get out of it. I'm not going to give all that stuff because I think I've already talked about it in the last video, and I want you to read it. But that should be enough to get you to read the book because it's actually insane. And there's also a slight nod to Greek mythology, which you guys know I love. But later on in the book, he changed his name to Prometheus, which is Once again, a very, very telling name. Prometheus being one of my favorite characters from all mythology, not even just Greek. I think whenever I first read that, I was like, yo, I see why you're named that. I've read that. I've caught up. But Ayn Rand's whole philosophy on individualism is very interesting. I don't really agree with it, honestly, at all. But I do think that it's interesting to read. Kind of like how I see absurdism. Absurdism is super cool to read about, but I don't think you can live life without hope at all. Like seeing hope is only a pawn for people. I just don't think that's like a fair way to live, considering that you'd be paranoid all day. And that's kind of how I see Ayn Rand's philosophy, because her individualism, it presupposes that you can't love anybody, you can't create anything. Like, there's so much stuff that you just cannot do, and I don't think that's possible. I think I'm more on the side of individualism over collectivism, but I'm not completely left the way she is. Once again, though, I am trying to get more into politics to be able to formulate my thoughts in a certain way, that's my next goal for the next maybe 4 or 5 months. At the end of that journey, I should be able to really conceptualize my thoughts more. But Anthem's a great read. I did just pick up Atlas Shrugged. I have not seen Fountainhead since I saw it the first time a few months ago. That's just right here. Just got it. This book's actually huge, but I did pick up Atlas Shrugged. I think I have 2 copies of this, actually. I think I just forgot that I have the other one. But those are all the books that I have read up to this point in the year. Now, these are my foreseeable future reads. Now, obviously, including the Bible. I read the Bible every single day. And I'm trying to get through the Old Testament soon. But I do read that a lot. So I would add that in here, and I would add it into the last segment. But before we get to this segment, I do have a brief interlude per usual. You can skip it if you want to skip it. It's all good. But I've been drawing a lot recently. I just got an iPad. I want to show you guys some of the stuff. I've been trying to do renditions on my favorite paintings and stuff. So obviously this is Caravaggio's Vienna painting. Well, David and Goliath in Vienna. But I kind of did my own rendition of it. I think I'm going to put why am I so close to the camera? So I'm going to put them on the screen instead of just standing up. But I think I didn't create a new style of art. But I do think it's something I haven't seen too often. I don't think I've seen it at all, honestly. I'm trying to pull from all my favorite stuff. So my favorite aesthetic when it comes to movies was Clockwork Orange, especially when it comes to just Alex's character. He was so interesting to me. But how everything was upside down, and some body parts were bigger than others. It was really just unique when it comes to aesthetic. So I added that kind of into what my art will look like. And I'm a big fan of Cubism era Picasso. I'm a huge fan of obviously Andy stuff. I don't know. I like a lot of stuff. Then I also started drawing at a time where I didn't really journal. So I don't have a journal. I don't really write my thoughts. I do some of that now, but I didn't before. So I would kind of write my thoughts on these artworks. So any thoughts that I was thinking, how anything would look, anything like that, I would just put it scattered somewhere on the painting. I'm saying painting, the drawing. And here's what it would look like. Obviously I'm gonna put them on the screen, but I have a lot of kind of just scrawled stuff like that. And I'm gonna put them on the screen. But I think it's really interesting stuff, and I don't really know what to do with them. So if you guys have any ideas of what I could do with some of the stuff I've been drawing, maybe some of the aesthetics, maybe stickers, prints, I don't know what I'll do. But I do think it's a cool outlet, and I do think I haven't really seen it too often. So it's original enough for me to kind of trademark it. Because I want to start posting them. I need to get better at kind of putting out what I create, because I'm very good at consuming art, but I do need to start putting stuff out because I do a lot of artistic stuff, a lot of creative expression, and I never post it. But yeah, that's all I have for you. Let's get back to the actual video. Brief intermission. I'm currently editing the video, but I made an art Instagram so I could put all the drawings and anything I do creatively, I'm gonna put it on this account. So it's gonna be in a caption if you want to go check that out. But I had to add this in. I'm editing the video right now, and I was like, I never mentioned it. So yeah, that's what all I had to do. Back to the video. So the book I'm currently reading right now, my main read right now, I'm so excited about it. I'm finally reading The Brothers Karamazov, obviously by Dostoevsky, but probably critically claimed the greatest book of all time, This and War and Peace. Now I'm only 30, 40 pages in, so I can't even give you guys anything at all about the book, except that I do enjoy the prose, but I knew that already because I've read Notes from Underground and Crime and Punishment. I know it's going to get crazy because it's acclaimed so high. People have this is the greatest book ever written. People say it's life-changing. They say the Grand Inquisitor section is probably the greatest segment of any book. I've heard so much good, so I'm excited to really get into it. I think I have mentioned it, but if you guys don't know, when I first started reading, Dostoevsky was who I wanted to read first, and I couldn't do it. I would try, and it just was too hard for me, honestly. And I set a goal that like after I read enough books, I'm gonna really pinpoint Brothers Karamazov to be my end goal. Like this is what I want to read, and after I read it, I'll be cemented as a reader. It's just cool to look at stuff like, you know, in hindsight. It's like now I feel like I understand everything I'm reading now, and it's like you got there, like very proud. Next one I got here is John Stuart Mill's essays. Well, it's really just works, but on liberty, utilitarianism. I think there's a few more essays in here. I did say it earlier, but I'm really trying to get more into politics, and I don't want to read a Democratic book or a Republican book or even like a Federalist book from back in the day or like anything like that. I want to read more of just political commentary. I want to read stuff that's talking about society, maybe manifestos. Like I do plan on reading Communist Manifesto. I do plan on reading Wealth of Nations, Capitalism. I do plan on reading stuff like that, but that's more in this realm when it comes to stuff that's not propaganda for a party. I just want to read more about society and see how it got to where it is, and the commentaries on the nuances, the ins and outs, the misnomers. I need to know everything about that so I can really formulate what I believe. And I looked up a good place to start with stuff like that, and this was mentioning. I think this wasn't number one on the list, but it was on the list, and I saw it next time I went to the bookstore, so I just picked it up. I mean, everything I read, I've always tried to pull as much as I can from it, and something this dense, I know I'm definitely going to get something out of it. I have to. Next one I got here is Civilization and Discontents by Freud. So I mentioned it last, I think one of my hauls, but I never got into it, unfortunately. I think a lot of stuff just came up. But I've been trying to get more into psychology. I read a lot of philosophy stuff, but psychology I really haven't tapped into too much. I have Memories, Dreams, and Reflections by Jung, and I have Civilization, Discontents by Freud. I don't have any more. I think I've read book also by Jung. But this will be the first psychology book that I read. I'm very excited about it. It's a short read, and the words are really big on it. Like, it'll take me probably a day to read. So I'm very excited about it. But I have heard it's probably one of the more sad psychological books, but also everything I read is sad, and I think life is sad. I think life should be sad. I don't think people that try and pinpoint only happiness, to me, you're living in a false reality. I don't think everything about life is happy. I think you can see it that way, but that gets into more. We'll talk about it later. That's all besides the point, but I am very excited to get into that. And the last two books here I have are Being in Time and Being in Nothingness by Sartre and Heidegger, respectively. Now, as you guys can probably guess, existentialism is my favorite section of philosophy. Camus, I read all this stuff. I've read Rebel, Stranger, Sisyphus, Fall, and I haven't read The Plague yet, but I've kind of chipped away at it. I think the only ones I haven't read is like, I haven't read First Man, but I'm pretty sure that's semi-autobiographical, like it's not philosophy. I haven't read Resistance and Rebellion. I haven't read Happy Death. But I think that's it. I think other than that, I've read all this stuff. And another one of my favorites is Kierkegaard. I've read Fear and Trembling. I've chipped away at Either Or. Sickness Unto Death. Like, that section of philosophy to me is super interesting stuff. Like, I love traditional philosophy. I love Aristotle, Plato, Epicurus. Like, obviously that's the founding fathers and the foundation of everything. You can't really argue that they founded maybe every sector. But I do think existentialism is peak reads. I think that is like the best you can get. And the two staples of the philosophy, outside of maybe The Stranger by Camus and maybe Sickness Unto Death, Kierkegaard, would be Being in Time, Being in Nothingness. I think Sartre is the flagship like philosopher when it comes to existentialism. Which that notion was what essentially made me start reading the plays, the No Exit play, and just really getting to like who Sartre was as a person, because I do think he's very interesting. And I also did research on who inspired him, and Heidegger was one of his biggest inspirations. And then I realized like Heidegger wrote a book called Being in Time, which is very obviously where he got Being in Nothingness from. So it all started to make sense, and I was okay, I already have Being in Nothingness, let me go get Being in Time, so I can kind of read them back to back and see what that does for me. And also all the essays that I write now are all existential stuff, so I think this will be very inspiring for me to kind of try to, carve out what I believe too. I'm pretty good at separating what I read from what I say, because I can compartmentalize in my head and kind of avoid the deathly hole of whenever you read too much, your thoughts become their thoughts and you become unoriginal in what you say. I've always been pretty good at kind of separating what I read from what I say though. I can kind of I have a pretty good filter system in my head. But I'm very excited to get into both of these. I've been putting off, because I was going to read Being in Nothingness a minute ago. But once I realized that I could do both of them back to back, I kind of put off reading Being in Nothingness, so I'm kind of itching to read it for a long time. And I think that itching will make me get through Being in Time even faster. So I'm excited to get into that. I'm probably going to read Brothers Karamazov next, The Trial, Kafka, just for like a kind of a palate cleanser, because Kafka he's the GOAT. And then after that, I might go Being in Time, Being in Nothingness, or I might go Montaigne essays, and then Being in Time, Being in Nothingness. I don't know for sure though. Don't hold me to anything I just said. A book could come tomorrow that I want to read and just skips all of that stuff. But that's what I plan on reading soon. That's really all I have for the video. I'm gonna just add this in at the end because there's no point in not. But I went to the bookstore yesterday and I got 3 books. So I think I already told you guys that Frankenstein's like in my top 5, maybe 6 favorite books of all time. But I've only read the 18 and 18 text. I haven't read the revised one. And I found the Penguin edition that has the one that's revised. This is the 3rd edition of Frankenstein, so 1831, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. And it has probably the coolest cover I've seen of Frankenstein. The original, the one I read, 1818, is like an animated one. It's pretty cool, but it's not as cool as this one. You guys already know how I feel about Frankenstein now. I don't even gotta say too much about how much I love that book. Next one I got here was The Idiot, Dostoevsky. I already have this book as well, but this copy is also different. I think it's a different translation too. Yeah, this one's Garnett. I have PNV. I think I'm probably gonna read the PNV, but it's just whenever I see Dostoevsky stuff, I have to get it. And it was $3. Like, sorry. I know you guys are gonna probably be like, let someone else get it, let someone else read it. You already have the book. I'm not really that sorry. And this last book's very cool. I've never seen anything like it. But it's the annotated Pride and Prejudice. Like, it's every page is like annotated by somebody, but it's not like annotated with like pen. It's like written into the text. And look at the cover. Like, this is such a cool book. Who makes these things? I haven't even gotten into any Austen stuff. I know Pride and Prejudice. I know Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Persuasion, Northanger Abbey. I know all her stuff. I just haven't read any of them. I think I do need to take a break from all the philosophy and really just like thought-provoking daggers when it comes to books, and maybe just read some more like lighter fiction. I do know that she's thought-provoking as well. She gives commentaries on relationships and love and stuff that, once again, everything is political. But I do think maybe one of the Bronte sisters or Jane Austen will be my next kind of palate cleanser after Kafka. So if I'm having too much like mental turmoil while reading Being in Time, Being in Nothingness, I might pick up like Emma or something. But that's all I got for this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you get this far and you see this part, love you. And now I have to pick up all these books, and I leave soon, so I got like all the books. You guys haven't even seen it. Hold on. Actually, I'm gonna show you guys real quick. This is all the books that I have. I don't know if you guys can really, hopefully I'm holding the camera right. But that's all the books I have. This stuff is gonna be messed up now. I don't know where it's gonna, hopefully you guys can see my hand. But I gotta pick up all these books I have now because I'm about to leave this place, and unfortunately this whole background is not gonna be here anymore because I'm going back to my parents' house for at least like a month or so. And I don't know where I'll make videos, so I might have to start making videos like on the go or something. I don't know, I'll figure it out, but man, I gotta pick up all these books, pack them all up. Not looking forward to it. But love you guys for watching, man. Be blessed, read something today.